Everybody
Well,
should be coming in.
nope. So we ready to go?
Ready to go.
Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome to our Capital Readiness Program and SSBCI webinar. We're so happy you can join us today and learn more about the basics of business operations. My name is Laura Bray. I'm Strategic Projects Program Manager with the Universities of Wisconsin Strategic Projects Department, and I'm working with the Capital Readiness Program and SSBCI. The Capital Readiness Program is a federal grant project funded by the Minority Business Development Agency and the Department of Commerce. Our goal is to create an on-demand training program to help women entrepreneurs realize capital for their small businesses. The program offers 4 learning tracks based on your business type: early stage, growth stage, food ag businesses, and tech businesses. Please reach out to me if you're interested in participating. If you've completed training or have explored participating in one of our cohorts, thanks for your interest. And we ask you to please complete the MBDA Client Transaction Form survey as part of our program. It's very important for us to collect data from our participants throughout the grant period, and we're specifically looking for information on business starts, capital realized, businesses scaled, and contracts awarded. We really appreciate your time and sharing of your progress. A reminder that this webinar is being recorded and it will be posted for free public access on our CRP website along with the slides. Also, per Universities of Wisconsin policy, we are unable to allow note takers to attend this presentation. Before we begin, I'll turn things over to Dan Brosman, Associate Director of Strategic Projects in the Office of Business and Entrepreneurship, who's going to share some additional information on SSBCI and introduce our speaker.
Perfect. Thanks, Laura. And as Laura
Sure.
said, I'm Dan Brosman. I work alongside Laura in the Strategic Projects Department of the Office of Business and Entrepreneurship. And we support the Capital Readiness Program as well as the SSBCI program. And today's webinar is provided and supported by that State Small Business Credit Initiative, or SSBCI Technical Assistance Program, that we run here in the state of Wisconsin for all entrepreneurs and eligible small business owners. We provide no-cost assistance to small businesses in different areas such as legal, accounting, financial services, and other general business advisory services. Our ultimate goal is to help entrepreneurs strengthen the business or grow and support different aspects or gaps or challenges that you're having in your business, and ultimately be better positioned to access different capital opportunities. To learn more about the SSBCI Technical Assistance Program, there is a QR code right there on the screen, as well as it will be shared in a follow-up email post-webinar. So without further ado, I want to introduce Christy Dudgeon. Christy is the president of SBC, Small Business Consulting, or SBC First, and has been working with the SSBCI Wisconsin program for several years, and supporting many of our entrepreneurs as they seek different support in the financial and accounting services area. So I will let Christy take over, and I think we may have some time at the end for some Q&A. Otherwise, also post it. Um, is there there may be
There's a
a chat
Q&A.
area as
There's a Q&A.
well, a
So
Q&A area.
yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
The
Okay.
chat, I think the chat is here.
Perfect. All right. Well,
Sometimes it's
Christy, the floor
confusing.
is yours.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Laura. Welcome, everybody. We are talking operations basics today. Happens to be one of my favorite subjects, even though I talk finance most of the time, just because I've been in and out of the operations world throughout my career, mostly in service-based industries. So you'll hear me kind of crossover parallel to that service-based world, but everything we're going to talk about today applies regardless of what type of business that you have, right? Because it's a operations basic. So we're going to talk systems and processes and people and the importance of documenting things. And I apologize, it looks like my camera keeps freezing. So I might have to pop off camera if that continues on. Dan or Laura, just let me know if that it becomes problematic, because I really can't tell on my end. If you have a question as we move along, as they mentioned, go ahead and drop it in the Q&A. Everybody can see the questions that are posted there. So if you might have the same question and you're not sure if somebody's already asked it, it's there. I will be glancing at it as I move along, and sometimes I'll be able to reference those questions, especially if it's applicable to what I'm talking about right at that very moment. Otherwise, we will have a little bit of time at the end as well that you'll be able to ask questions. And at that point, we might be able to raise hands and go off mute. I do have a lot of content today, so I'm going to move pretty fast. And I am going to share these slides though with Dan and Laura. So if anybody needs those, certainly reach out to them and connect. As Dan mentioned, my name is Christy Dudgeon. I am the president of SBC Bookkeeping and Consulting. We're a technical assistance provider, not just for the Wisconsin SSBCI program, but many SSBCI programs throughout the country, as well as other technical assistance programs. Our team, we're all entrepreneurs, small business consultants, and we assist small businesses throughout the country every single day. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. We talk business all the time over there, right, on LinkedIn. So I am happy to allow you to be part of my network. We are going to have polls today. So this is interactive. There's going to be quite a few, right? This is operations, this is hands-on, and really the nuts and bolts of our business. So what is creating the most stress in your business right now? And if you wait just 1 second for me to get to my polls, maybe, it will let me actually add that up there. So nope, where did it go? We might not get to do my fun polls today. Just kidding. I found it. Okay, so that should have popped up. You guys should be able to actually see it on your end. So our question is, what is creating the most stress for your business right now? You're either wearing too many hats, things are falling through the cracks, your team relies on you for everything, you don't have enough time to work on the growth, and maybe you don't have enough consistent processes. So go ahead and drop that in there. I'll leave that live here for just a little bit longer until we get to the next poll question, which will be here in just a second. So what's the real problem? It's really not generally workload, right? It's really how the work is getting done. My graphics are going to have a ton of information on it, so I'm going to kind of park on them for a minute. But good operations, really good operations within our business, help create clarity before we grow. So in most small businesses, kind of what happens is that we start to grow and something might be working for a little while. Generally, it's just us. Maybe it's one more person. The more business that we add, the more people that we add, things start to fall apart, right? And we can't really keep control of it anymore. So the answers to those polls there, a lot of you said, you're wearing too many hats, right? So I'm trying to be the operations person, the salesperson, the finance person, the this, the that. I'm doing everything. Things are falling through the cracks, right? Maybe I don't have a system in which to be able to hold that together. I don't have enough time to work on growth, right? Because I'm trying to do everything. And then we have no consistent processes. So everything's being done differently. Nothing is being done the same way. So what owners think generally in these situations are we need more staff, we need more hours, we need better employees, we need less business. I've actually heard that last one, which almost made me cry. He says, well, we grew, but I didn't have enough time and it was just causing too much work for myself, so we scaled back. Big mistake, right? So that's a systematic issue, process issue. Owner can't get out of his own way. So that's where we've got in the middle of this screen, we've got this owner dependency, and this cycle just keeps repeating itself. Now, I've seen this in many different sizes of business. Now, if you're just starting out, right, you generally the only one, the business truly depends on you. There is nobody else there that's going to be doing that work. So therefore, you've got to do everything, right? But as we start to add more people, start growing, then things definitely start to look a little bit different there. But the owner is always solving the problem. The owner becomes the bottleneck. I've seen this in $8 million, $11 million companies, even. The owner can be one of those hurdles that we have to overcome. The team asks more and more questions. Maybe they ask the same question all the time. The owner has less and less time. More mistakes keep happening, and the owner is the only one that can solve the problem, right? And they have to solve more and more problems. What often is happening, though, instead of what we think, is that the work isn't organized, expectations aren't documented, information is trapped in people's heads, most likely the owner. I like to share the story about I joined a company one time that it was a $1.4 million company, and really the reason that I was there was to help them fix the reason that they couldn't get past the 1.4 million. They had hit a ceiling. They could not figure out how to grow any further. Every single thing about that company was trapped in that owner's head, including the vendors that they purchased from, the customers, their addresses, their phone numbers. They didn't have anything written down anywhere. So anybody that they were going to try to hire from that point forward didn't know what to do because they couldn't find the information anywhere. So I literally spent a year when I joined that company. They paid me for an entire year to rebuild all the data that they just hadn't written down or put anywhere. They didn't have any kind of software, didn't have a spreadsheet, didn't even have it on a piece of paper. Processes vary every time. So maybe someone would ask me what to do something, someone would ask the owner what to do, they would do it differently, right? And there's always this competing process. Nothing is ever done the same. Inconsistent results, right? Frustrated teams. Who wants to work in an environment like that? And then you have a stressed out owner because, of course, they think I'm the only one that can do it. So we've got to break that cycle. We have to stop what's wasting time, basically like eliminating friction and busy work, right? We don't all need extra work. We're already doing plenty. Then we need to simplify. So, what can we make easier? We have to make it clear and easy to follow. And then systemize. So, what should become a documented process? Document, create, consistency, and train. More clarity is less chaos, better results, more freedom. So, this is growth by design, basically. This is really the only way that we can scale is if we actually get our operation systems in place and accurate. So, if you could solve one operational frustration for yourself or your company today, which would have the biggest impact? Let me see if it's going to let me launch. I think I have to stop sharing my previous one. There we go. All right. So if we could solve that one operational frustration today, which would have the biggest impact? I answered the same questions repeatedly. Important tasks get forgotten or delayed. Everything seems to depend on me. My team isn't always on the same page, or we are constantly reacting instead of planning. I like to call that one firefighting. You will hear me say that a lot of times. So you show up to work and you are just ready to start putting out fires like it's a war or something. It's a cycle that you get into, and it's really hard to get out of as well. So I'll let you keep answering that one here for a second, and then we'll go back to it. So let's talk about that firefighting then. So reactive thinking or reactive processes as opposed to being operational healthy. So these are two very different businesses, right? We've got two very different owners. And sometimes this is a personality thing as well. So sometimes we like to be needed and we feel like we're actually accomplishing something if we're out there putting out all of these fires. So our little owner on the left. We're just solving today's problems. We have constant interruptions. These are last minute decisions. So we just feel like we're doing this all the time. As opposed to an operationally healthy business, which we're running the business, we're not reacting to something. This means we have a plan, we're executing it, we're reviewing it, and we're constantly improving it. So it's this cycle that keeps moving. We have workflows, and then those planned priorities, clear workflows, and there's very few surprises. Now, there's always going to be something that comes up, right? And that's where customer service comes into play. Where we have to react. We can't plan for everything. However, it is a very different environment operationally to be the person on the right as opposed to the person on the left. And when I talk about that business that I mentioned before, where everything was stuck in the owner's head, they were also a business that was very much to the left. And everybody that worked there reacted in that exact same way. They were ready to take on whatever challenge came their way, as opposed to knowing what their day was going to look like before their day started, having it all planned out, having it routed. This was in that service world, right? Instead, it was customer A complains, we got to go run, we got to take care of that. Then we've got to run over to customer C that complained, and we've got to take care of that. And we just keep taking those things off the plate every single day. And it does take a little while to get out of that world. So it's not going to happen instantaneously. But the more that you plan and prepare, the more likely you are to stop being that reactive type business. So strong operations mean less chaos and more freedom. So let's look over here at our poll. And it looks like we've got a problem for the most part with everyone with important tasks getting forgotten and delayed. And then also that dependency on the owner as well. And then constantly reacting is there as well. So signs that your operation may need attention. So if you're not sure, unless I just already spelled it out there really clearly for you that you're in that kind of reactivity mode, but signs your operation may need attention is that things are regularly falling through the cracks. You answer the same questions over and over. I was in one company one time, and it was when we were in the beginning of adding systems and processes they didn't have in place. And the owner of the company actually laughed and said, "I feel like there is a path cut in this carpet to your office." Because everybody in the company would just come to my office and ask me questions all day long. From a process systematic standpoint, that was really helpful for me to identify exactly what processes we had to pick off first, which we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. However, it's also really annoying when you're trying to get your day done, right? And so, one nice thing was the owner no longer was having to answer all those questions. However, everybody was coming to me. But that is not what any employee in any environment wants to be dealing with on a daily basis, because you get nothing done. All you're doing is answering questions. Work gets done differently every time. If you have that one person that is that central place where people are asking questions, or you have a division head or a department head or whatever it may be, every company tends to have these problems at one point or another, especially as you're scaling and growing, new problems present themselves. But work can get done differently every time if it's not a documented process, and people are just pretty much making it up as they go. Team members are always waiting for direction. Also, they're not empowered to make decisions because they don't know the process, and they basically have to ask someone to be able to do the next step. Important information lives in people's heads, as we discussed before, and taking time off feels impossible. This is an owner's issue, right? We can't take a vacation. We can't walk away from work. We can't take a day off. We feel like if we're not there, the business will stop. Right? It won't exist anymore. So indicators that we want to watch for. Are employees always coming to you for answers? You have to approve every decision. Nobody else has the power to do that. Progress slows when you're unavailable, right? Can't take that day off. And you are the backup plan for everything. Systems do create freedom when you put them in place, and then freedom drives growth. So then we can scale. The business is only going to be as big as you can contain if you are the person that is making all the decisions, approving everything, the one that's telling everybody what to do and where to go. So, and then things start to fall through the cracks, right? Because we can only handle so much throughout the day. And what I mean by falling through the cracks is, as a business owner, you may be actually a great operations person, right? And operations may be your thing, and sales may not. So sales is going to fall through the cracks. And then you realized you had to keep your books and finances, and maybe you had to pay the bills, and so you've got to, go over there, and maybe that's where the weakness starts to happen and falls through the cracks. The other things that happen, if you have customer service issues that happen throughout the day, or you have complaints, or maybe orders weren't received when they were supposed to be received, so you're starting to miss deadlines, you're forgetting follow-ups, unfinished projects, customer requests are starting to slip through the cracks. And this can get out of hand really, really quick. And so that could be like the business owner that I discussed earlier that then scales back the business and says, it's too much. I can't keep track of all of it. Common causes of this is a system issue, right? This is very rarely a people issue. It's a system issue or a process issue. And then we plug people into that system or into that process. So task tracking is a huge one, right? We have to have some kind of clear task housing. We'll talk about this in a little bit. that we can find them, people can see them, we could assign them to other people depending on what our business looks like. We have unclear ownership. This is another one. If the owner is the only person taking ownership of any decision and only is the one that has authority to make any kind of a decision, nobody else will take ownership of anything. And so there's no clear responsibility. Things often get overlooked. And then we have a lack of follow-up processes. So nothing ensures things are getting followed up or completed. So we don't have that actual loop then in a system that says something got done. So then you're constantly asking, did something get done? Is this okay? What's happening with this, right? So the cost dependency of the owner, we mentioned that before. The more the business depends on you, the more it limits the growth and freedom of the business. So they don't happen by accident as far as operations. It is purely by design. So how many of these warning signs exist in your business today? And I didn't share my results, so I'm going to share them real quick. And you guys can see important tasks was the big one. I'm going to stop that share, go back, and we're going to talk about warning signs. And so how many of these warning signs? The same questions keep coming up. Tasks are falling through the cracks, or we spend most of our time reacting. Based on your earlier answers, I suspect tasks are going to be the biggest one, and then reaction probably the second, which it looks like that is what is happening. So what happens when these issues go unaddressed then? Operational challenges don't just create stress, they cost time, money, opportunities, and growth. So this goes well beyond the actual stress factor that is occurring. I'm going to go ahead and shut this poll off and then actually share it with you guys so you can see it this time around. But operational chaos does cost a lot more. So as I mentioned before, operations that are good are clear, right? They drive results. They create freedom. There's a lot of financial aspects to operations as well, from an efficiency standpoint, right? Our margins are better. The company generally is generating better profits when operation is there. But the lost time. So we have delays, rework. Rework is a huge one. I worked in a company where, you know, if you send a crew to do some work, right, or something, and they don't necessarily close the loop on everything that was supposed to be done there, or they didn't have the materials that they needed to have there, somebody's upset, right? And you have to go rework. So there is a true cost to having to send someone to do that again. If you're doing marketing, right, and you say the wrong thing, or you put the wrong date, or the flyers were printed incorrect, there's a ton of lost time, which also equals lost revenue, right? So we've got missed deadlines, slow responses, errors that cost you business, frustrated customers, inconsistent experiences, employee frustration, unclear priorities, constant firefighting, that drains morale and productivity. You get burnout as the owner, and then you have limited capacity. So too much to do with too few people, and then growth hits that ceiling. Things that fall through the cracks, we've talked about those before. But the solution to strong operations is that clarity. Everyone knows what to do, how and why. That seems really simple, right? But we're going to talk about kind of how to manage that. Consistency, work is done the same way every time. You have an empowered team. They have to have clear roles. They have to have accountability and trust, and then sustainable growth, which gives everybody more time, better decisions, and stronger results. There's that mention down there at the bottom about more profit, which actually is one of the things that I was speaking the least about today. But ultimately, that is the outcome of having a great operational system. So which cost has the biggest impact on your business today? It's going to be my next one in my polls. Launch. So lost time, lost revenue, employee frustration, customer experience, or owner burnout. What do you think is costing or has the biggest impact on your business today? Looks like some of you are burnt out. I'm sorry to hear that. Hopefully I can help you work through that, or at least give you some tools to get started. Owner gets burnout, everything starts to go wrong, right? We start to question why in the world we started this business in the first place. And that's never a good place to be. We should be excited to wake up every day and go to the office. Probably what you're not seeing is that actual loss of revenue. That's generally the one you can't quite see as easily until you get on the other side, where you can go, oh my gosh, what a difference this makes. I never knew we could make this much money. I work with a client in the HVAC industry, and I've been with her for several years now, and she was at a ceiling. She was being held back, and it was mostly from a financial standpoint as well as a operation standpoint. So she didn't understand her financial systems. They didn't have an operational system. It's a family-based business. Her and two sons, and they were very disorganized. They've doubled in revenue the last 3 years, and so once you start doubling in revenue, we're talking millions of dollars difference from year to year. But that is what can happen when you actually get control of some things and have visibility. And so, always my favorite thing when someone says to me, "Do you remember where we were when we first met?" Right? So, they were making money, they were doing okay, but they weren't having fun, right? And now they're starting to have a lot more fun than they did before. So the four systems that every business needs then. So we know what our impact is. We know it's costing us time. It's costing us money. We're burnt out. We have to have four systems, one of which we're talking about today, but I have to mention the other three because they are equally as important. And when you are building your business and you're designing what your business looks like, it's important to keep all four of these in mind, especially when you start to move through how do we build out processes and what systems. So we're going to go deeper, obviously, into operations. But you want to make sure that you also have a people system, and this is how people work together. How do we communicate? What are our expectations? Accountability and ownership, training and development. This, at some point, as your business grows, starts to look like HR or human resources or something to that effect. This is to build a strong team and a strong culture, right? These are what our people systems look like. As simple as right now, this could be how do we hire someone? How do we pay someone, right? How do we train them when they first come in? That kind of thing. Financial systems, huge, right? Often forgotten or one of the last things. As I mentioned before, I talk financials all the time. Financial systems. So this is how the business performs. We've got to have financial reporting of some kind. Our KPRs are our goals or KPIs, cash flow management, forecasting and planning. So we need to have that clarity into our financials so we can make great decisions for our business. And then we need to have a sales system as well. So how are we acquiring our customers? What does lead generation look like? Our sales processes and follow-up customer journey. That creates that predictable revenue as we go along. So when all four of these systems are working and we're starting to build them, right? And so we're growing over time, that's when our business becomes easier to manage, easier to grow, and much less dependent on our owner. And if you've ever done EOS or know anything about EOS, it's called the Entrepreneurial Operating System. This is a way of structuring your company. There's a lot of books out there about it. They're called Traction. It'll walk you through how to kind of develop a structure like this and what the best structure would be for your business. It's not necessarily these four, they can have different names, but they are important in knowing that they kind of have to fall under those buckets. So the operation system is how the work gets done. So that's what we're talking about today, and we're going to go through how to build systems and processes and identify things. So examples of these look like client onboarding. So I got them from sales. How do I onboard them? What does that look like? Order fulfillment, right? So the order's been placed. Then how do we get the order out the door? Service delivery. How do we deliver on a contract? How are crews set up? These are all types of that process. Project management and our daily workflows. So how does operations work within itself? It really is the heart of a well-run business. So this creates consistency when we've got this built out. Everyone follows the same proven process. If we were in manufacturing, if we talk about someone like Amazon, right, or the car manufacturers, look at the processes that they build out in those manufacturing, right? If you're in lean management, it's even to where there's certain things are placed at every single workstation in the exact same way, so that employees are able to, doesn't matter where they're standing within the line, they're able to reach for whatever they're reaching for, and it's always going to be there because it's always in the same place every single time. When I was in the landscaping world, we set up our shop in that way, so that every time someone would come back from their day or they were starting their day, they always knew where to find whatever piece of equipment that they needed for that day. And then they would always put it back in that exact same place as well. And so it was built out in a way that it was very standardized. It reduces mistakes. It helps clear steps and standardize, minimize those errors, makes work repeatable. So systems allow you to deliver quality every single time, and it helps people know what happens next. So clarity builds that confidence and keeps work moving. I keep saying clarity, right? Over and over and over again to help free up that time and build that capacity to go. So we've got to document the process, then we have to train the team, we have to follow the system, and then we're continuously improving it. So even the best processes, once we lay them out, you will have to tweak and change them. You will learn every day about the process. And I had a business coach one time that I worked with years ago. He would always tell me, be hard on the process, soft on the person. And that meant we usually go straight at the person that might have made the mistake or the error instead of looking at the process to say, oh, we have a process problem in our process, right? That's why they keep making this error over and over again, or they keep doing something not the way that we wanted them to do. It likely is a process issue. So task management is one of those pieces that we talked about, right? So this is how we make sure that we don't things don't fall through the cracks, so that we don't lose what needs to be done next, or even if we're in the world of firefighting, right? So if that's the place that you are right now, then we have to start there with our task management. And I always like to use the example of when I was in snow removal, super fun world to be in. There are many calls and many requests that can happen in the middle of a snowstorm. I'm sure that you in Wisconsin can certainly appreciate it. In Ohio, where I'm normally based, we have a lot of ice storms here. And so ice storms will result in a lot of firefighting in a very short period of time, right? And complete gridlock, especially on the commercial management standpoint. But important work just doesn't depend on memory, right? So you've got to have some kind of task management system in order to know a request was made or something needs done, right? Who is going to do it, and then when is it going to get done? So over on the right hand side, it talks about task lists. You can use shared project boards, assign those responsibilities and due dates. We use something as simple as a Google Doc or a Google spreadsheet, actually, and we called it a red, yellow, green. And this is when companies were smaller, right? The bigger that you get, the more sophisticated the system needs. But from a Google spreadsheet standpoint, you could share that with a lot of people. Everyone has a visibility to it. Whoever's doing dispatching, whether it's coming in from an email, a phone call, a text message, whatever it may be, right? We've got salespeople, we've got people in the field. There's lots of things that could happen during that type of situation. And so that Google sheet was just getting filled up with it. And then those who were responsible for clearing it out or taking care of the problem, they could change that from red. Red means it's not done, to yellow means it's in process, and green means it's finished. So if there was a salesperson that was working on it, or if there is a dispatch person that's receiving a call, they're able to reference that sheet and say, yep, you called in at such and such, they were there, at such and such time. And that creates great visibility for an entire team with a really simple, free tool. That's a system, right? So the system is the Google sheet. The process was, this gets entered, it gets assigned, whoever's responsible for it changes the color, right? And then there's that follow-up that happens. So you can just immediately see how simple a process and a system can be built with tools that are free that you probably already have access to. Sticky notes don't really work, right? Unless you're just that single person or it's a centralized location. Depending on the size of the business, again, I've been in businesses that use a whiteboard if they're trying to communicate to crews that might be working working first thing in the morning, or a team that's coming in, or there's some kind of shift change, right? And that's just leaving someone a note. That's our communication point. Text messages, you might have text message blasts that you use. I'll remember that later. Those don't always work for the most part, just because we can read a text message. I don't know how many of you have read a text message and then never gone back to it. I've done that before many times, right? Same thing with emails. Emails, even though they're in our email box, depending on how crazy the day is, those can fall behind. I've been an operations person before, working with a rather large sales team. Salespeople, may or may not want to do administrative tasks, and they would always just say, "Well, I told you about it," or "I sent you an email," or "I sent you a text message." That always told me right there, instant process needs to be created, because one, there needs to be a place to track all of the information that they're providing to the operations team. The operations person then needs to be able to assign that out appropriately, and then they need to have visibility to when it's complete. Otherwise, you constantly get questions then, right, of did this get done? Did this get done? And so a simple system process there is also super helpful. So we need to capture whatever the task is, assign it, track it, and then get it done. Your business runs better when important work is managed, not remembered. Nobody can remember everything. So even if it's just you right now trying to manage the tasks that you have in front of you, you can use some of those simple tools as well. As the business scales, though, as I said, you will notice you will outgrow things, right? So even the Google Sheet, depending on the size of company, might not be the best tool anymore, right? And there's a ton of task management softwares out there, apps and things that you can explore. So every task, though, needs to have or you should be able to answer these three questions: who owns it? When is it due? And what does done look like? So it needs to be very clear as to what done is. Clear ownership, clear deadlines, clear expectations. That's how the work gets done. So the best tools are the ones that you actually use. This is the other key. You can pay a ton of money for software or for an app, and then nobody will use it. Happens all the time. There's actually a big thing in business right now with AI implementation, right? So there's all these amazing AI tools that you can implement in your business, and then people aren't using them anyway. We're reverting back to what's comfortable. There's that text message coming back into someone, or that email that's just being sent. And we revert back to that old status. So again, don't be hard on the people, be hard on the process. So reviewing the process, redoing the training, making sure everybody's following it. So simple tools, written checklist, again, right? Not the best, because it's a piece of paper, it can get lost. Not everybody has a visibility to it. Shared spreadsheet is one step up from that. Phone notes, right? So if you're trying to keep yourself managed from a task standpoint, you can use your cell phone and create notes in there. Google Tasks is another thing, depending on if you're in Google Workspace. Microsoft has one too, right? So you can assign tasks. Moderate, getting a little bit more sophisticated. Microsoft Planner, Trello is one of the management. And then you can get a little bit more advanced with something like Asana, ClickUp, Monday.com. These are all web-based, right? And the goal to this, though, is visibility. So you're communicating it to everyone. Everyone has visibility to it. The ability to assign something to someone is even better. Even in our company, which we're still a very small business, but we can do assignment of tasks even off of a Google Doc. So if we've got meeting notes that we went through, we can assign it to someone else in the company. We can even put a due date on it. And then we know whether or not something tracked through the system and got complete. Not always the best to use there, right? Because you've got to be in the right Google Doc, but housing things like that in the same spot. But if we are talking in departmental standpoints, or in you're within your work group, right? So if we're an operations team, we might have our own system that others can add to, but it's the one where there's someone that's assigning it within our operations team, and then we're tracking it back through, and then there's visibility to the completed. So what are most of your, or where are Can't even read my own writing. Where are most of your tasks currently tracked? So this is our next poll, either by memory, an email, text message, sticky notes, spreadsheet, or a task management software. So if you guys want to answer that poll, it looks like right off the bat, we've got someone on spreadsheet. We've got a couple memories, some sticky notes, emails. I should have probably asked you this question before I told you how bad some of those were, but so thank you to everyone that's being honest about that. It doesn't look like anybody is using a task management software. Oh, there we go. Task management software now. So lots of different things, but it looks like we've got quite a few of you that still are storing all of your tasks in your head and aren't really putting that down anywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and share this so you guys can see the results. But yeah, so everything I'm talking about today seems to apply to a lot of you. But it's best definitely as you scale or grow, you're going to have a system here. Things will absolutely start to fall through the cracks as you grow revenue, you grow clients, and the more and more that your company is doing. But the next step, and I've alluded to this a few times, right, is that communication path. So we can have the best task management software ever. We can be putting all of our tasks in there, but if there's no way that it's getting communicated out or communicated back into, then it's a wasted system, right? It's not working in the first place, and that's usually a process gap. That means that the end of the process maybe isn't flowing. We've got the beginning of the process. We're actually using the system. We're putting the tasks in there, but maybe the assignment out to who's responsible, when it's supposed to be getting done, how it's communicated back, those types of things aren't necessarily there. So that task manager, it defines what needs done, assigns it to the person, sets the due dates, tracks the progress, right? Clear task, reduce confusion and missed work. Then the communication is what creates that alignment with the entire team, or who needs to know, right? Not everybody needs to know all of the things. But this is where we can share updates and changes. I talked about, shift change, whiteboard. That's very antiquated, but in some situations, depending on what your business is, works really well. Even in some of the largest manufacturing companies that I've been in, you can see a whiteboard where they're giving an update about something that happened and communicating. People need to be able to ask questions and get answers too. They need to know who's responsible, who owns a particular process. Therefore, they can ask those particular questions. It keeps everyone informed, and it also reinforces that accountability part of it. So clear communication builds that trust, and it keeps the work moving. That equals fewer missed tasks and less rework. Rework being the big one. Rework costs money. We very rarely ever budget for it. We don't sell for it. It's not one of those things. Sometimes in contracting or construction, we might add a 10% overage, right? Not necessarily thinking that we're going to need rework, but that's sometimes a buffer that we'll give ourselves. A stronger team is more accountable, and that also gives us better results. So good systems start the work. Good communication, though, is what keeps it moving forward. Common communication challenges or signs that your communication system needs attention. Team members receive different information. This is extremely frustrating for any environment for someone to be in. I could speak to the family-owned business that I was in before. The owner, the father, there were sons that worked there. Then there was me, who was a total outsider. I'm responsible for certain things, but somebody may go to someone else in the company, and instead of saying, go talk to such and such, that clear channel of who owns it or who's responsible, they would just answer the question, which it wouldn't be the direction that would have been provided to them by whoever owned that process. And so they took that information, went and did something else, and it wasn't following what that process was. It's frustrated for the person that owns the process as well as for those that are trying to work in it. Important updates get missed. That's a big one. We have to be able to communicate when the process changes and why the process changed, right? And so that's a new training thing. Or if someone happens to own the process that didn't own it before, employees will repeatedly ask the exact same questions over and over. Now, you might have trained them multiple times and they still may do this. That's a people problem, not a process problem, but generally the process is going to help clear out a lot of those questions that someone is going to ask over and over. Decisions aren't communicated clearly. So this is when something changes, right? They don't necessarily get communicated clearly. And people assume that someone else knows. That happens all the time. We assume someone has the information or knows about it, and it doesn't, or they don't, right? So maybe your finance person doesn't know how operations uses the same tool. If you have a system in place, right, but finance is using it one way and operations is using it another, there is that assumption that they both know how each other uses it. That's not necessarily a real thing. I've lived in that world. Clear communication isn't just nice to have, it's actually essential. If again, if you build the great system, if you've got the start of the process, great, but the communication doesn't happen, the whole system fails, right? The whole process falls apart. This aligns your team, it prevents that missed work, and it really does drive better results. So create communication lanes then. So not every conversation belongs everywhere. This is the other part of it. So we first have to identify, based on some kind of framework, what type of information and where it should appropriately go. So within your business, as you start to grow, if you're talking to finance, you're talking to sales, you're talking to your team, you're talking to leadership, you're talking to clients, right? Where is this going to be housed so everybody understands the clear communication path? So daily updates. I put team chat here. I've worked in businesses where daily updates, it was a text message in the morning, first thing, or we had a stand-up meeting, right? So everybody meets in the office first thing in the morning. We all get our updates and then we all go about our day. The text message was nice too because it's in writing and everybody could reference back to it. Project work, there's probably some kind of task management system that's saying what's involved in a project, what's involved in a contract, right? So everybody knows what needs to be done in order to complete whatever that project or contract or whatever that may be. It's like a fulfillment thing too, right? That order, once that order is filled, then that process or task is complete. Procedures, these are called SOPs, standard operating procedures or process documents. So we want to write these things down. We need to have them documented and we need to house them somewhere. So then everybody needs to know what that is. Is it on a server? Is it in a Google Works, Google Drive, those kinds of things. Client information. This is probably in a CRM or some kind of client file. And then company announcements. This is probably at some kind of team meeting if you have those. So the power of regular check-ins. So I talked about you don't necessarily have to have these every day, but they're kind of nice, right? Or you have a regular team meeting. Consistency beats that constant communication every time, right? If everybody knows when it's coming, we don't have to have a meeting about the meeting to plan for the meeting and then the follow-up meeting about the meeting. I've been in companies like that too. So weekly team meetings are a great thing. This talks about our priorities, our roadblocks, gives updates, upcoming deadlines. People can go do their work, right? Monthly operations reviews, these are really important. What's working? What's slowing us down? What do we need to improve? So most teams need fewer meetings, more predictable communication. So what communication challenge creates the most frustration in your business right now? We've got another poll. Let's see, right here. So repeated questions, missed information, lack of accountability or follow through, too many communication channels, or unclear expectations. I'll leave that up there for you guys to answer while I continue on. So even great communication won't create consistency without the processes. So we've talked a little bit about systems. Now we're to the point of the processes. So 3 essentials, 1 strong business. Tasks tell us what needs to be done. Communication tells us what people need to know. And then the process tells us how the work gets done. When these work together, the results start to flow. So a process system, how work gets done consistently. So without a process, we get different results, right? ABC. With a process, we get the same result over and over and over, or really close to the same results. There can be some variability in processes because we're not going to fully define everything in our process. But this removes the majority of the guesswork and it creates repeatable, reliable results every single time. So what is a process then? It's a simple, repeatable series of steps. So this is a process formula here. We have a trigger, which is the event or the situation that starts a process. Then we have the steps. These are repeatable actions taken in the right order. And then we have an outcome, which is our expected results when the process is complete. So if we follow the process, we get the outcome every time, right? That's the goal if we have a good process. And anybody should be able to follow it. So if it is my first day on the job and you were to hand me an SOP, standard operating procedure, that lists out a process, I might not know the system yet, but I might be able to read through the standard operating procedure to say, do this, then this, then this, then this, and this. The goal of all these processes when we first start, when you're outlining these things, is that you should be able to define 20% of the process that gets you 80% of the way. This will make sense when I start to move on in just a second. So an example, and this is about 20% of the information that gets us 80% of the way. I'm not saying exactly what this contract looks like and every single line I have to fill in. I'm not putting what this email reads like, right? There's different parts in there, but this is the actual outline of a process. And it's our client onboarding. So the customer signed the contract. They immediately receive a welcome email. We collected the required documents. We scheduled the kickoff meeting. Then we consider the customer to be onboarded once they've finished that. This process is clear. It's a consistent experience. Doesn't matter who the client is, right? Every single client will follow the same path and they get better results every single time. Now, we're probably going to define systematically, right? The exact contract we're going to use, the exact email that they're going to receive. We're probably going to have a task checklist that tells us exactly what documents are going to be required, the way who is going to be invited to this scheduled kickoff meeting, right? And then what we consider to be successful customer onboarding. But as far as the definition of the process, this is what it looks like. So the process test then is, could someone else successfully complete this task without me? That's what every business owner needs to ask themselves. If the answer is no, you probably need better documentation. So write it down so others can follow it. Clear instructions, make the steps easy to understand and follow, or a defined process, which is creating that repeatable system that gets those consistent results. So why owners avoid documenting processes? It happens, right? So why have all of you avoided documenting processes at this very moment, right? We don't have time. So the reality is we are already spending time explaining it repeatedly. We just are stuck in that firefighting mode. So we haven't been able to get ourselves out. It changes too often. The reality is that the core processes are more stable than we think, and then it's all in your head, right? These are those regular problems. So if you could document one process this month, what should it be? And by I say, what should it be? What could it be? What process should you get started with? And there's actually a fill in the blank here. So you guys can actually write that in. So process documentation doesn't have to be complicated. As I mentioned, we're documenting 20% to get 80% of the benefit. So a perfection looks like a 40-page SOP, right? Progress is that simple checklist with those key steps over there on the right. We're focusing on clarity, not complexity, and done is better than perfect. So we need to start somewhere is basically what I'm saying. So we also need to start working on our business. Guy on the left, right? He's at the beach. He's enjoying his life instead of working in the business. So most business owners that I talk to are 100% this guy on the right. He may bounce to the left every once in a while, but then we suddenly jump right back in because we think I can do it faster, I can do it better, I could do it cheaper than anybody else, and we fall into our old patterns. So I call that the operations trap. We're busy, we don't have time, our systems stay inefficient, we have more work for the owner, and then we're busier than we ever were before. Repeat, repeat, repeat. We lose good employees, we can't figure out why we can't hire any employees. The busier we become, the more important it is to really create that time for improvement. So improvement doesn't have to be complicated. Start somewhere. Everything in business, just start somewhere. Carve out 30 minutes each week if you can. What questions were coming up? What is slowing us down? What process do we need to improve? You guys just already answered what your most important process is, right? There's quite a few of you that are still answering that question. Start with that process, right? Small improvements consistently create those big results, and you will get there. As I mentioned before, it took me a year just to build the data for a company that was stuck in someone's head. You might need help. You might need someone to help you do it. But if we are reviewing, what we're trying to do is we're trying to stop wasting time, ours and our employees, right? The number of times that those employees had to walk to my desk, that path, that cost money, every single step that they had to take. Because they got up from their desk or they drove back to the office or wherever it may be. And instead of actually moving the company forward, they were asking me a question and taking the step back. We need to simplify things so they can be made easier, and then we need to systemize. So what should be a documented process? And we're focusing on those small steps. Yeah. So I've included two ChatGPT prompts here, actually, and these are going to come out in these slides that you can utilize on your own in order to start working through this, right? So first thing, check in with AI, right? We're asking AI to act as an experienced operation consultant for our business and help conduct that weekly operations review, right? So this is kind of the brainstorming part of it. Maybe you don't know, maybe you can't see it because you're so ingrained in the business that you haven't taken that step back to really start to focus and look at what are the first processes that I could have. Most business owners, I can tell you that you're going to ask yourself, what's the thing I don't want to keep doing that I'm doing every single day, right? That's probably the parts of the business that you're going to start taking on to someone else's responsibility, right? So that's probably going to be the first hire and the second hire and the third hire. As I mentioned before, maybe you love operations, but you hate sales. You're probably going to hire a salesperson. Maybe you don't know finance or understand it. Absolutely, you're going to have someone helping you with your finance information. So ChatGPT really can walk you through simply figuring out what those bottlenecks are, what those repeated questions are, right? And so you're going to go through a little question and answer session here with ChatGPT. And then I have another prompt. So once we've asked Chat to help us with that weekly operations planning, then let's do action planning, right? So once we've identified those things, let's take that next step then. And this is the prompt. Whoops, I think I actually have the exact same prompt. In the slides that I send you, it will have the correct prompt, but really the action planning prompt, what it does is it takes that next step. So you can take one of those bottlenecks that you have identified, and you can then say, you're helping me develop the action plan, right? Helping me create the process for that. And so I will share that out with everyone. I'll share that with Dan and Laura, and they can share it with everybody that's on here today. So you can actually take those prompts, and it doesn't have to just be ChatGPT. You can utilize it in any of the AI worlds that you may be using, and at least help you get started. If you need additional help, though, key takeaways here. Overwhelm is often a systems problem, not a workload problem, right? We often don't have enough people to do the work, but we also don't have the systems in place, so we could just throw more people at it and still get the same results. Strong operations create that consistency. The goal is not perfection, it's repeatable. Every business needs 3 core systems. It's actually 4: operations, people, financial, and sales. Tasks, communications, and processes have to be clear. People perform better when the expectation and workflows are defined. Document 20% that gets you to 80% of the benefit. So start with the major steps and then start building in the detail later. And then work on the business regularly. I cannot stress number 6 enough. So you're going to set aside time each week to identify one bottleneck. If a process isn't working, you want to look at the process and figure out where the problem is. It's not a person, it's a part of the process, right? Maybe it's a wrong person in that process, but that's something that when you're working on the business, you'll actually be able to identify and see. For those of you that missed the QR code on how to register for the Wisconsin SSBCI program at the beginning, here it is again. Also, remember the Q&A is open, and if you have any questions, this is definitely the time to ask. It is 1:59 in my world. It's 12:59, I believe, in your world. So I will stick around for a couple minutes if you guys do have any questions that you want to ask. I love this one. So how much time off is appropriate? I feel guilty taking 1 day off a week. That's for you to decide, right? So quality of life is extremely important. I am a workaholic, so I am probably the last person in the world that should answer that question. Although I do defend my time off like it is the last day of my life, and maybe that's because the older that I've gotten, right? I don't feel guilty about taking days off either, because you need that, right? If you have great people that you start to surround yourself with, you'll feel less and less guilty about taking days off as well, Carly. So that is the answer to that. Any other questions that anyone has? Otherwise, I thank you all for joining and for being awesome participants in all of my poll questions. If you have any questions, also any follow-ups about the video or the slides or whatever that may be, I believe you're going to hear from Dan and Laura after this, and also you can reach out to them with any further follow-up that you might need. Laura, do you have anything?
No, other than to say thanks so much for the great information and your time and presentation today. And thanks to everyone for joining us. And as we mentioned, we'll be sending the recording out. And please let us know if you have any questions in the meantime. And I hope everybody has a great day.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.